Hello Mishpucha, it's Courtney, America's Jewish mother. Welcome back to my channel, and I'm here today with a Friday Reads and August TBR video. So this past week I finished 4 books, and I'm currently reading 4 books, so let's go. So the first book that I finished last week was The Other Black Girl by Zakiya Dalila Harris. I listened to this as an audiobook. It was narrated largely by Aja Naomi King, who did a very good job. So this is about a mid-20s woman named, African-American woman named Nella Rogers, who is the only black person that works at a fairly sizable publishing house. And then one day, another African-American woman named Hazel is hired into the publishing house, and Nella's very excited because she's like, oh yay, there'll be another black girl and I can have someone to talk to and someone who's in my corner when I have to deal with racist microaggressions and racist stuff that's in manuscripts and things like that. And at first it seems like they're gonna hit it off, but then some strange things start happening, and Nella starts getting anonymous notes to tell her to leave the company, and Hazel seems to sort of gaslight her about things. Like, she tells her privately that she's going to support her about this racism that Nella, has talked about that's in this manuscript that the firm wants to publish. But then publicly, Hazel's like, oh no, it's a great book. It's totally great. So she does not take up for her like she told her she would. So anyway, so that's the basic premise of the story. It's kind of like a very slow burn. What exactly is going on here? Is Hazel behind this stuff? Can Nella trust Hazel? Etc., etc. I liked it. I liked this book overall. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I was entertained. I did feel like some things went on for too long, especially some scenes went on for too long, and we got really in the weeds about the details of the publishing industry, and I think it makes sense because this is a debut novel and Zakiya Dalila Harris worked in publishing for a few years, so obviously that's the environment that she's familiar with, but the rest of us don't necessarily want to know all about the publishing business. But I did like it overall, and I think, if she writes more books, hopefully with some good editors, she'll kind of learn to tighten those scenes up a little bit and kind of get us to the action faster. I will say that there is a speculative element to this novel that comes in toward the end that might turn you off if you otherwise like realistic contemporary fiction, but I didn't really so much mind it. I thought it was fine, and yeah, I was entertained, and I would recommend it. I think it does a really good job of showing how African American people get treated in largely white workplaces and the kinds of overt racism and microaggressions that occur. I also think it does a good job of showing how the white supremacist power structure tends to pit black people against each other, as if there can only be one. So all of those things I liked about it. Again, I just wish it had kind of gotten to the point faster and some of the excess fluff about publishing had been cut out. But again, I would still recommend it overall, so 3.5 stars. I then finished a play, Venus, by Suzan-Lori Parks. This was amazing. I gave this 5 stars. This is one of a very few number of 5 stars I've given this year. So this is about the life of Saartjie Baartman, who was a woman who was taken from Africa to England and put on exhibit in freak shows under the name the Hottentot Venus. So this play is about her life, and we see how many times she sort of changes hands once she is taken to England, and Suzan-Lori Parks also gives voice to some of Baartman's unrealized hopes and desires, and I just thought she did a really good job with this. It is a more experimental play, so it doesn't just have an exact straightforward narrative, although I feel like most of what happens in here is at least roughly told in chronological order, but you do have some things that are not realistic, like people announcing what the title of scenes are, and there's a chorus of 8 people that take different forms that pops up occasionally, and then there's also an element of a play within a play here as well. So again, if you want to read this, please go into it knowing that it is experimental, but again, I just thought it was really great, and I thought again it did a really great job at showing how this woman, the various ways in which this woman suffered, and again sort of giving voice to her unrealized hopes and desires. So 5 stars. Then I finished Women Talking by Miriam Toews. This is a book that I feel like almost needs no introduction because it was certainly a booktube darling when it came out a couple of years ago. So this is about pretty much what it says on the cover. It's about a group of women who meet in secret and talk. It takes place in this Mennonite community in Bolivia where for a period of several years now, at night, the women have been drugged and raped. And so at the point where this novel takes place, and by the way, this is also based on an actual thing that happened in real life. So in real life, something like this really happened in a Mennonite community in South America. So at the point where the women are meeting, the men have gone out of the colony to go to the city where the rapists, right, have been held to post bail for them because they're all, of course, members of this Mennonite colony. And basically the women are meeting to talk about what they should do, right? So should they stay and fight or should they leave before the men get back? And the story is told from the point of view of a man named August Epp, and he was from this Mennonite colony, but then left and has been gone for a long time and has come back somewhat recently. But he's not as religious as the other people in the colony, and he's considered sort of an outsider. And so the women ask him to come to the meetings to take the minutes of the meetings because all of the women in the colony are illiterate. And they trust him and they don't have anything to fear from him. So I quite like this novel overall. I gave it 3.75 stars. I like how philosophical it is and how the women discuss the issue of what to do from their own religious standpoint, and rather than just relying on what the men have told them all of their lives about their scripture and their religious beliefs, they kind of, for some of them for the first time, interpret the religious text and their religion for themselves. So I really like that aspect of it, and I, again, really enjoyed all of the discussions about why they should stay or why they should leave. I found all of that really engaging. A couple of things did not work as well for me here. One was that because there were a number of different women, I had a hard time keeping track of who was who. Partially, this could also be because I listened to this as an audiobook, and so I didn't have a physical book or an ebook to flip back to the beginning if they're, for a list of characters or anything like that. So I kind of just went with it and was like, okay, well, I just accept that I'm not going to necessarily know who's who every time, whatever. And then the other thing that didn't work as well for me is I didn't like that even though this was supposed to be a women's story about women finally kind of coming to decisions for themselves and taking matters into their own hands and deciding their own fate, I didn't like that there was a man at the center of it. And a lot of times August, the narrator, would go on these long asides that were about him, even though he's really only supposed to be there to take the minutes of the meeting. So I just didn't like how, even though it's supposed to be about the women and about their discussion and about their decision, that it also was like, and also August, I was like, okay, but August, you're not that interesting. So that's sort sort of irked me, but otherwise I did like it. So like I said, I ended up giving it 3.75 stars. And then the last book I finished this past week was Another Brooklyn by Jacqueline Woodson. Again, I listened to this as an audiobook, so I don't have it here to hold up and show you. So this is a story of a woman named August. Funnily enough, I didn't even make that connection until right now, honestly. So the guy narrator in Women Talking is August, and the woman narrator in Another Brooklyn is a woman named August. So go figure, there you go. And it's about to be August, so oh my gosh, clearly the stars have all aligned with this one. Wow, okay. It was like it was meant to be this way, y'all. Okay, so the narrator of Another Brooklyn is this woman named August who is reflecting back on her life, and especially she's reflecting on her childhood and adolescence and her memories of her father and her brother, and their mother who left them when August and her brother were fairly young, and there's kind of a lot of back and forth about where the mother is and if she's going to come back and all of that. And then it's also about August sort of coming of age and her friendship with 3 other girls in high school. So it's about all of these things. I liked it overall. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I thought the writing was very lovely, and it had a lot of moments of tenderness and insight and beauty, and I would definitely read something else by Jacqueline Woodson, but because this was a shorter book, I feel like I didn't get as much character development, and especially development of August's various relationships with people, as I would have liked. But I also understand why Jacqueline Woodson wrote it that way, because the book seems to be partially about memory, because a lot of times throughout the novel, August will say, this is memory. And because memory is very sort of fleeting and fragmentary, and you know, you kind of just focus on something for a little bit, but it's not a sustained thing. So I think that's why the book is set up in this sort of more fragmentary, staccato kind of way, where you don't get a lot of extended scenes between the various figures. But I did like it, and I would definitely read something else by Jacqueline Woodson, so 3.5 stars. So on to my currently reading. So I finally this week picked back up Ralph Ellison's Shadow and Act, which I think I started this book in February, y'all. And it's not even that long. It's like a little over 300 pages, and I finally read another essay out of here, and now I'm at page 169. So I'm really going to try hard to finish this book in the next week or so. Hopefully I can do it. I am enjoying it. It's just taken me a really long time to get through. I'm also still reading Max Gross's The Lost Shtetl. I think I should have clarified last week that this is a novel. Okay, this is not based on real events, but this is a novel about a remote village in Poland where it's like so remote and deep in the forest that it managed to miss pretty much most of the entire 20th century, and then by the time someone from the village makes contact with the outside world, you know, we're into the 21st century, and meanwhile this little Jewish shtetl has completely missed like the Holocaust, 2 world wars, the Cold War, etc., etc. So I'm about 40 pages from the end of this, and I like this overall, but I definitely have some issues with it that I will talk about when I actually finish it and wrap it up. And I'm also still reading Daniel James Brown's Facing the Mountain, which is the last book I have to read for the BookTube Prize. I have about 80 pages left in this, so I definitely have to finish this in the next day or two because my rankings are due tomorrow. So I will certainly finish it today or tomorrow so I can submit my ballot on time. And then I recently started reading Julia Alvarez's novel, How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accents. I'm not too far into this yet. I have read and enjoyed previously Julia Alvarez's novel Afterlife, so I'm hoping I will like this one too. And with that, I'm now going to turn to my August TBR. So I am still working on my genre fiction project, where I'm trying to read books that are in different genres that are kind of outside of my comfort zone. So I have 2 genres left to read. One is fantasy and the other is inspirational or gentle fiction. So in August, I'm planning to read a book to fulfill the fantasy genre, and this is either going to be The Deep by Rivers Solomon or The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. Kind of depends whichever one comes available for me first at the library. Now, I will say that I have already tried to read 2 other books to fulfill the fantasy genre, and those haven't worked out so well. One that I tried to read much earlier in the year was Nevo's The Chosen and the Beautiful, which is like a retelling of The Great Gatsby, and I DNF'd that, I think, maybe somewhere around the halfway mark, slightly before the halfway mark, because I just wasn't enjoying it at all. And then more recently, I decided I was going to try to read Ring Shout by P. Jelly Clark, and I got 1 chapter into that, and I just wasn't vibing with it. So I was like, alright, well, I'm not going to read that either. So I really hope one of either The Deep or The House in the Cerulean Sea will work out so I can finally actually finish a fantasy novel for this genre fiction project. The other project book I'm going to read in August is for my Asian American literature project, where every month I'm reading at least 1 book by an Asian American writer. Some months I've read more than 1. But in August I'm planning to read Joan is Okay by Weike Wang. This is a new book that I think just came out this year. Weike Wang's debut novel, Chemistry, came out a couple of years ago now, and I think this is her follow-up novel. And this is about a woman named Joan, who is a 30-something ICU doctor in New York, and she is the daughter of Chinese immigrants to the United States, so she's first-generation Chinese-American. And I think it's about her family relationship with her parents and her brother, and it also, based on the description, seems to have a little bit of the millennial fiction vibe to it, so we shall see. I will also be reading 2 as of right now, unknown books for the BookTube prize, because those results for the finals round will be announced on August 1st, and I'm guessing that I will have to read, well, I will for sure have to read for the finals round 2 or 3 books. It depends on which ones make it through, but at maximum I'll have to read 3 books, and at minimum I'll have to read 2 books. So I'm at least going to read 2 of whichever books those are in August, so I have spots available for those. Then I would like to read in August Antiquities and Other Stories by my beloved Cynthia Ozick. So Cynthia Ozick is a contemporary Jewish American writer. She is in her 90s. The woman is 93 or 4 at this point. And she's still writing. She had something come out in the New Yorker in March. So I actually read her novella Antiquities last year, loved it, a 5-star read for me. So this has that novella, and then it also has some other stories that she's written in more recent years, including The Bloodline of the Alkanas, A Hebrew Sibyl, Sin, and a story called The Coast of New Zealand. So I will reread Antiquities, but mainly I got this so I could read the newer stories. So looking forward to that. I'm also planning to read Absurdistan by Gary Shteyngart. So this is a book that's about okay, well, I don't know what this book is about because there's no description on it. However, I do know that it's supposed to be funny, so hopefully it will be funny and I will enjoy it, and at any rate, I will report back to you once I've started on what it is about. And then, to sort of round out the Jewish books that I'm planning to read in August, I am also going to read Portnoy's Complaint by Philip Roth. So this is one of Philip Roth's earliest novels. It was very controversial when it came out in the 1960s, I believe. Let's see. 1967? Yeah, I think 1967. So anyway, so it's about this guy named Alexander Portnoy and all of his neuroses, especially with respect to sexual things. And this was very controversial, as I said, when it came out because of all the sexual stuff in it. However, having last year read Sabbath's Theater by Philip Roth, I feel like this cannot possibly be worse than that. So bring it on. And that will be the last Philip Roth book that I own that I have not yet read that I will get off of my physical TBR. And then the last book I want to read in the month of August is Life as a Unicorn by Amrou Al-Kadhi. Amrou Al-Kadhi is a Muslim drag performer, and this is their memoir. So looking forward to reading that. This was gifted to me last year in our holiday book exchange by Lindsay of Lindsay's Book Life. So again, looking forward to finally getting around to this one. And it says, most of all, this is a book about my mother. It's the journey of how we lost and found each other, about forgiveness, understanding, hope, and the lifelong search for belonging. So, yes. So let me know if you have thoughts about anything I've mentioned, either on my August TBR or from the Friday Reads portion of this video. Let me know what you're looking forward to reading in the month of August. Leave me a comment down below. Always happy to hear from y'all. So I hope everyone is staying healthy and well. I hope you're doing good reading whatever you're reading. And until next time, what did Killia call you, mother?